So, Greg, what would you say is the number one reason why agents do not make cold calls?
I would say call reluctant, just not having the skills. You know, they're just nervous to get on the phone, hear a no, just rejection.
I think it comes down to not knowing what to say. Today, Greg, we're going to be doing, and this is for our audience, we're going to be covering the scripts section from the Agent Blueprint series that I have. And today we have here Greg Taylor, none other than the legend, the Godfather of scripts, right, is the way that I look at you. And Greg, you may not remember this story. You probably don't. You and I were part of a roleplay group. And this was maybe 8-9 years ago. And you were my partner for that week. You know, it's the same day, same time or whatever. And I was told that you were my partner. So I was a little intimidated, right? I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm partnered up with Greg. My skills aren't there and whatever. So anyways, I did my thing, right? You did yours. Obviously, you blew me away. You were solid with everything. Super conversational, which was awesome. So when I'm done with my script, right? You never cut me off during the script, which thank you for doing that, right? At the end, you said, Chris, if you don't mind me asking, which script is that? I'm like, that's a script that, that we're all using. It's the expired script. You said, do not modify that script until you have completely internalized it. Once you've internalized it, then you have permission to make tweaks, the tie-ins, the transitions, all of that stuff, right? And that stuck with me. That really stuck with me. I actually recorded that conversation one day. I'll play that back for you. But anyways, and that was something that made an impact on the importance of, completely internalizing it before you start tweaking it. So any thoughts on that story?
Yeah, I mean, that's really the basics, right? It's too many people look at a script and they basically say, I want to make this change. I don't like the way that this sounds. And they start making these tweaks and they start changing it. But what they don't realize is that over time, they will say something different every single time. And a script is not about doing something different every single time. It's about, I want to do something 1,000 times to myself. So by the time I'm speaking to a seller who's hearing it, they only have one opportunity versus my 1,000. So I want to repeat that exact same thing as many times as humanly possible. But if I keep changing it, I'm not getting any edge over whoever I'm speaking to at that time. So I really want to make sure that I have a full mastery of whatever I'm saying to them. And then I have that advantage. Does that make sense?
It really does. And it comes to down to if then, right? If the seller says this, then this is the way that I handle it. And if you change it every time, just the variable, it gets to the point of where you can't really get a full grasp of it and master it if you just keep changing it every time, as you mentioned.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it's really that repetition. Think about it. Take a Tom Brady, right? He's looking at film, when he was playing, obviously. He's looking at film. He's going at it over and over and over and over and over. So by the time he's looking at the defensive backs and the defense, they can't compete because he just has so many reps over what they've done. I saw something with Kobe Bryant. It was an interview with Patrick Bet-David, right? And he says, look, I'm paraphrasing, but he says, I wake up for my first workout, let's say at 5 o'clock, maybe 4, but 5 o'clock. Then the second one, I'll do at 11 o'clock. And then I'll do another one at, in the afternoon. And then I'll do another one in the evening. So he's like, well, everyone else is getting in 1. I'm getting in 4. And then if I look at that over the course of a week, a month, a year, a decade, you can't compete. And not only is it the conversation between you and the other person, but it's also the conversation versus all the other agents or investors that you're competing with.
Correct. And I believe I heard that same exact story and example also with Kobe, right? I believe Kobe was in the gym at 3 a.m. and he had 4 sessions in a day, right? So it's like, how much more is he getting ahead than the average person, right?
We want to get ahead, but you're never going to get ahead if you keep changing it and doing all that stuff. That comes later. Once you got it down and your confidence is there, then of course you'll hear some other things, a little tweak here and there, and you can spice it up from there.
Right. And what I think is interesting on how some agents, they say, I don't want to sound scripted, right? I don't want to sound scripted. And I'm thinking to myself, and I ask the agents, what is the alternative, right? Winging it? Call me crazy, but when it comes to commissions, which are thousands of dollars, as Jim Rohn has said, he said in the past, the late Jim Rohn, casualness leads to casualties, right?
True.
You cannot be casual when it comes to someone's objection. If they have an objection, that's a legitimate concern that they have. And if you don't have the script, it's not a systematic response. You're not giving the person the best service possible.
Yeah, 100%, Chris. I would agree with that. It's if your intention is to give them the highest quality service possible, you have to be like 100% on your game. And if you're winging it and you're just like talking and telling and doing all of that, you're not really serving them at the highest level, right? Also, the beautiful part about scripts that I love is that we're asking questions, right? So if I'm asking questions, what am I doing to the seller?
Well, you're making them feel like they're being heard.
They're being heard, and then I'm getting them to do what?
To respond.
Right? That's all I want.
To provide you with information, feedback.
That's what I want. I want the response. If I can diagnose, right, when I go to the doctor, is the doctor coming in and saying, I went to MIT and then I went to Duke University and then I did this and, I did this many procedures and blah, 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 blah for 30 minutes and then says, hey, are you going to hire me? No, they're asking questions, right? The entire time. So it's the exact same thing. We want to make sure that we're asking tons of questions, figuring out what it is. And then based on that, I can diagnose exactly what needs to be diagnosed versus just assuming, let me tell them everything about myself. And hopefully they'll accept that because that's not true selling.
Right. No, it's not. It's like if the doctor were to tell you in the middle of his screening, but hold on, let me show you these pictures that I have with my poodle by my pool, right? It's ridiculous what some of the things that agents do. But anyhow, when it comes to the scripts, would you say there's some type of, way that agents can practice improving their scripts? I mean, any suggestions on, again, practice basically?
Well, I would say with practice, it really comes down to quantity, right? And practicing perfectly, practicing the exact words perfectly, saying them very quickly. At the very, very beginning, when I was attempting to master the scripts, I would say them 5 times very fast, right? And then I would, in terms of trying to memorize them, right? Another technique is to just say one line over and over and over and over and over until you have it memorized, and then go to the second one, and eventually the third, fourth, and if you screw it up, start all over from the top. Just keep going through until you completely memorize that, because that's the thing too. You want it internalized so that it's actually you. So when people say, "Oh, it sounds too scripted," yeah, because you're reading it. But if it's internalized and you are truly like an actor, right? An actor doesn't sound quote unquote scripted, but guess what? They're reading a what?
Right, they're reading a script.
100%, right? So it's the exact same thing, but they sound masterful. When Al Pacino does something, Robert De Niro does something, whoever your favorite actor is, they sound amazing because they've practiced it and internalized it. And then now it's their personality combined with the script. And now it sounds masterful. And that is really the level that you want to take this. You want to be masterful to the highest degree. You don't want to just like kind of casually say some words. You want to be like the absolute best at what you're doing. So when someone hears it, they're like, wow, I'm in the presence of greatness. Like I don't do these often, but that was special. That was really good.
And so you'd say chanting, right? Repeating.
Yep.
I've also in the past, what I would do is I would write them out, right? I'd write them out, whether it was, 5, 10, 15 times. Also, what I would do is I'd get these 4x6 index cards and I put on the front of it, I'd put the objection, the back, I'd put the handler and a couple variations of it. So I'd have my wife just throw different ones out, right? I've got a friend in the business, my cousin's an agent, whatever the objection was. And every time, if I wouldn't handle it, smile first, right? Look at them in the eyes and deliver. If I couldn't do that, then I had to keep, going back until you do. So one exercise that I've done, Greg, I'm not sure if you've done it with any of the agents that you've worked with, because you were a coach in the past.
Yeah.
Is an exercise I do is when you make your phone calls, make a note of every objection that you get, right? So make 100 because you have to have, a good enough number to test. So make 100 phone calls. And from those 100 phone calls, make a note. Let's say you're calling expireds, for example. expires or cancel listings. They said, okay, I'm not going to put it back on the market, which that's a condition, but that's something else. Right. So the next one could be is I've got a friend in the business, or I don't want to sign a long-term agreement. Whatever the objections are, you make a note of each one. And you're going to see that from those objections you keep getting, there probably are, how many would you say that are constant?
A handful.
I would say 5.
Yeah.
Right. Like you just have 5, maybe 6.
Yeah.
So if you know that you're only going to get 5 or 6 objections, it would behoove you, right, when that comes out of the seller's mouth, where you just crush it. So you've got that one down. So once you got that one down, then there's another one that comes up. And once that other one comes up, okay, let me work on that one.
And now what tends to happen, Chris, is now you're in the place of anticipation versus like you don't know what to say, you're nervous, and you're just like, I'm just going to say something. Now I know what you're going to say to me. So when it comes, I knew you were going to say that. And now I can attack and just basically handle that objection with a smile and then move the conversation forward, right, to the ultimate objective.
Correct. And it comes down to probabilities, right? If you're at this point in the conversation, only these objections can come up. And as you continue going, once you're able to handle all of their concerns, we can call them objections, but in the reality is their concerns of the sellers. Once you can get to that point, you've answered all the questions, you set the appointment, and then we pre-qualify.
Right.
And why do agents want to pre-qualify, Greg?
It's a good question. Pre-qualification, really, what we're in the business of doing is we're looking for people that we can help and serve, right? So the pre-qualification helps you and the seller decide if it makes sense to work together. Because guess what? If I'm going to be dedicating my time to going out on appointments, I want to make sure that I can absolutely service this person. So for instance, if I start to qualify or let's say I don't qualify anyone, right? I just go out on appointments. Hey, I'm new. I don't care. I just want to go out and get in front of some people. What you're going to find very quickly is some people have no motivation. Some people have all the time in the world. You'll get an old person that they'll meet with people all day because they're just bored, right? But they have no intention of doing anything, right? Or somebody just actually cannot do anything. They can't move forward. There's something that's happening that prohibits them from selling that property. So I want to know 100%, can I help them? And if they can, and I can move the conversation forward, and I can also confirm, provided that what I say makes sense, you feel comfortable and confident that I can sell your home. Are you interested in listing your property with me? So now I know they gave me a definitive yes that they will potentially list the home with me versus them saying, oh no, I have my cousin's agent. So there's no way Thanksgiving would get blown up if I gave you this. There's no way that would happen. So I'd like to know that before I actually go through all the trouble of doing the homework and CMAs and all that, and then going out to the property and wasting my time. So the pre-qual, Chris, turns into a filter. And that's really what we want. I want to filter out who is an ideal client that I can absolutely serve, and they are willing to hire me. I want to confirm that. I want to confirm the price. Even if the price is off, I can figure that out during the pre-qual. And then when I'm doing their CMA, and let's say that number is off, I can call them and say, you know what, I looked at the CMA and I see the number that you were asking. I don't see how this number is going to work. Do you happen to know of anything that maybe I'm unaware of that's sold that would support the price that you want? Oh no, I just kind of wanted that price, and it was just kind of, but right? They go through that conversation. So.
And I think the more experienced that you are with doing that pre-qualification, Greg, you make that determination. Am I going on this listing appointment? Am I going to see this seller, right? Because it depends, I think, where you're at in your career. Because if you're extremely eager and ambitious and you just want to present, you don't necessarily, your level, right, of screening isn't very high, you may go on that appointment. I think the more experience an agent has, the more inventory you take on. You say to the seller, you call them up like you just said with the scenario of it being overpriced. The sales in your area, Mr. Seller, they're showing about 700,000. You said that you wanted 925. Is your home really 1,700 square feet? You confirm all the information. And if they say that, yes, everything that you said is correct, but they tell you, I just want 925. And when you go down to the core of their motivation, if it's not super high, you know what? I'm sorry, but I don't feel that I'm the right agent for you. You may want to go with another agent who's willing to list your home $225,000 above market, because I can't. I'm not the best person to serve you.
Yeah.
And you exit, right? It's better exiting a transaction before you even get involved. I mean, how much time did you put into it at that point? If you have staff or somebody to help you with the CMA, between the phone call and the CMA, you probably have 35 minutes, as opposed to presenting, taking the listing that you're not going to be able to sell, right? If their motivation isn't high enough. You could probably put 10, 20 hours into the transaction, and at the end of the day, not have a paycheck to show for it.
Yeah, it's just it turns into a complete waste of time, not just for you, but also for the seller. So if you could avoid that, it's great. So the pre-qual is fantastic.
Do you remember what the first question, and I'm quizzing you here, do you remember what the first question on that pre-qual is?
Before I come out.
Before I come out.
Yeah.
And if you can just repeat that, because I know you know it in its entirety, repeat that line.
So before I come out, if what I say makes sense and you do feel comfortable and confident that I can sell your home, are you prepared to list your home with me?
How key is that question?
And that's the one. That's the money.
How key is that question? I'm going to come visit you. I'm going to do a presentation. At the end of my presentation, if everything makes sense, are you willing to do business with me?
Right.
They could say no.
Yes. Great. I'd rather have the no up front, right, than getting there and getting the no later. Let me get that no up front. Please give it to me. I'm a big boy. I can handle it.
And then you can see if you could handle it. I mean, recently, I listed and sold a property with the agents, with a seller's mom was an agent. The first time in my career, I listed somebody that their mom was a real estate agent. A couple years ago, I listed one where the seller, his wife was an agent, part-time agent. But if you're not scripted, you can't work through those, right? So when somebody says to you, I've got family in the business, my mom's a real estate agent, if you don't ask the right questions, you'll never be able to list that property, because you're going to say, oh, okay, your mom's an agent. All right, bye. Thank you. Sorry. Bye. Hang up. Right? No, my mom's an agent. Then you just keep asking, digging. And then before you know it, you may be able to go on a listing. They're motivated enough. You'll have a transaction that closes under your belt.
Yeah. You know what? I'll give you a quick story that's hilarious. So one time prospecting, I booked the appointment on the spot, pre-qualified 100%, and then set up the appointment. So appointment is set for like Friday at 3:00, let's say. Great. So the day before I call, and the guy's like, no, I basically booked the same appointment twice, right? Because it was an abundance of appointments that happened that balloons today. That's great. So I set a lot of appointments that particular week, and I didn't realize, no, I set this appointment weeks prior.
Okay.
And then that specific week, I set another appointment with the same guy. And then as I'm going through the pre-qual, I'm like, do you have any other appointments? And he's like, yeah, I got this other guy and blah, 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 blah. And then as we start talking, I realized that the other guy was me. And I was like, wait, hold on. We're good. We already have an appointment at 3:00, and we, proceeded and took it from there. But hilarious. So it's good because you may just be on the same appointment against yourself. And you don't want to do that.
And if you're competing against yourself, that's a great place to be. Right?
Yeah.
That's a great place to be. So with regards to that same pre-qual, there's a question on there, and there's so many important questions, right? One is what they want for the property, and two is what they owe.
Yep.
You have to know if you're walking into a short sale or not. I'm not sure about in your market, Greg, but your market, I'm pretty sure it's just as crazy as it is here in South Florida.
That is correct.
Right? You being in Hoboken, to where inventory is limited, right? So there's not a whole lot of short sales because the amount of equity that people have.
That's correct.
And what other question on the pre-qual would you say is key?
It's really their motivation. Where are they going to next, right? I really need to know that motivation. Like, why are you selling? Like, I need that. That's critical.
What I say is there's three key factors that is needed. What I've heard is called permission to close, right? For you to have permission to close, you have to have three elements from the seller: why,
Yep.
where, when.
Yep.
If you don't have the why, where, when, and you set the appointment, you better make darn sure that when you're going to that pre-qual, that you have one of those, the missing one, answered. Because if you don't have it, you may just go on the appointment, and it could just be something that just goes completely sideways because you haven't answered the why, where, when.
Yeah, those are critical. Like without that, if you don't know when they need to sell, they could sell next year. So now you're again wasting your time. If you don't know what's the reason behind what they're doing. If there's very low motivation, I'm just kind of like want to test the market out, right? Like if you get that, then that's a choice. You get to decide. So it's so important that you get that information before you then proceed to close for the appointment. And now you have something that you could work with and you can see the finish line. If I'm going to take a test and I can get the answers to the test ahead of time, I want to do that every single time. So that's exactly what this is. It's a test and I want to get all that information up front.
Correct. And I feel that sellers, this is my opinion, my experience, sellers sell for one of two reasons. One is because they have to sell, or two is downright greed.
Yes.
Right? When you ask a seller, okay, so let's say that I can get you the 1.1 that you're looking for your house. Where are you off to next? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? Right? So you're not sure where you're going. You have no timeline. And the next step is so unclear. That's probably a listing that's going to expire.
Yeah, and
usually that seller is going to be overpriced.
And what's great with those, they stick out like a sore thumb when you have that conversation, and they're like kind of like wishy-washy. I don't really know when. Whenever it sells, and some pie in the sky price, they stick out. And now it's a matter of you being a professional to either back out of that, or see, does it make sense for you and the seller to do business? And 99 times out of 100, that's going to be a no.
It's going to expire. The seller's going to cancel, and there's not going to be any monies there for anybody. Not for the seller. A buyer can potentially not walk away with what they're looking to buy. The agents don't get paid. It doesn't really make sense for anybody to take on that listing. I know that when I'm at a listing presentation, and the numbers are a bit closer, not too far off, I'll tell the seller, look, let's do this. Let's list this property at the 1.1 that you're looking for. If we see in the next couple of weeks that we have very few showings and no offers, that means that you're probably off on pricing by at least 5%, could even be upwards of 10%. So if that were to be the case, right now, let's implement into the listing agreement an adjustment of price of whatever it is, even if you just say $50,000. Let's just do $50,000 into this agreement. You're going to see how motivated that seller is to work with you. Not only work with you, but to continue providing price improvements if in fact they are just so far off. And if they don't give that to you, you may just want to walk away.
Yeah. Again, you're getting the answers to the test. So if you're at 1.1 and you say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if we're in the market for 14 days and we have no activity on that, typically we're offering the price about 7 to 10%. Would you be willing to do an adjustment right now? So in the event that happens, we're able to do that. And they're like, absolutely not. If I don't get 1.1, I'm out of here. I'm not selling. Again, I'd rather know that up front, and I can humbly say no if it doesn't make sense, if I don't see a path to getting there, a path to success. The other key piece of that too, Chris, is like, look, they assume that we can just get them whatever price. They name the price, and then it's our job to go get that price, right? But even if you and I are great salespeople, let's imagine for a moment that we did get them that 1.1, but the market, the comps are coming in at 900,000. Under what circumstance is another agent going to convince well, first of all, the buyers have access to all the information, yes? So what are the chances that a buyer is going to say, you know what, I see everything that's out there, 900, but I'll give them $200,000 more. Never going to happen, right? But then let's say, what are the chances that their agent, even if that buyer's like, I don't care, I want it. What are the chances their agent is going to allow that to happen? Let's imagine the agent has no clue what they're doing. What's the chances the appraiser who represents the bank is going to let that happen? 0. Right?
Which is the most important part of the equation.
Yeah. So it's there's just no way of getting there. There are too many hurdles. There are too many gatekeepers for that to actually happen.
What's funny is that we could just keep playing on with that one, right? So, Mr. Seller, if the appraisal would have come in at 900 and you're asking 1.1, a buyer's willing to pay for it, that $200,000 difference, would you be willing to adjust the price to 900,000 if that were the case? And that's another one. He
Yeah.
says, absolutely not. I want 1.1. I don't care what the appraisal comes in at. I just want that amount of money. And then you know if it's something that you want to take or not.
That's right.
And the answer is usually probably not.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
I remember my coach, Aaron, which you know very well.
Yeah.
He had told me, because I had at that moment, I probably had 13, 14 listings. And he goes to me, so how are they moving? I said, it's actually really slow. I said, they're not selling. He's like, you need to get price adjustments across the board, which is a logical response, right? For someone to say to you. So I worked on getting the price adjustments, and he goes to me, Chris, if you don't get the price adjustments on these listings, are you basically a museum? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, are you like just bunching up all of these listings, all of these houses to say that you have 13, 14 listings and none of them can sell? They're collecting dust, right? So that's not doing the seller any good. That's not doing you any good, right? So that's valuable insight and lessons, right? But if once you keep improving your script, you ask better questions as the process goes along, you may not even want to take those listings. And there are instances, Greg, that you would take a seller that's overpriced. And when would that be?
Motivation. When that motivation is to the moon, that is a key indicator right there, right? When they're like, look, I have a job transfer. I have a small window. I have about 60 days. I have to, there's no question about it. I have to move. But here's the deal. I really want to get 1.1 for this property. I'm aware that, things are going for a little bit less, but if we can just try, if you could just try it at the 1.1, we can move this forward. Now, if that motivation is there, and I understand that they are willing to do a price adjustment maybe in a week or two, then that would make sense for sure.
Absolutely. Hell yeah. Right. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
I think it's an open conversation between you and the seller. Look, 1.1 is significantly above the market. You want to give it a shot. Let's give it a shot. A couple weeks into it, right? You just keep having that dialogue, and they're open to it because they have to make a move. So earlier I had said there's two reasons why a seller wants to sell. One is because they have to sell, and the second is greed. That first one with having to sell, there's you said a job transfer. That's a huge one, right? Death, divorce, and sometimes even a growing family may not be enough of a motivator. I've had instances where if the family can't afford the price point or the payment's just too high, that may not be enough of a motivator to need that additional bedroom. So again, any other scenarios that you can think of aside from the transfer, death, family?
In terms of motivation?
In terms of somebody being like super pressed to having to sell.
Yeah, I mean, it's all of those for sure. Divorce, death, job transfer, sometimes school, they need to transfer. The kids are becoming a certain age and they need to transfer school, things like that.
One thing that I'm seeing here a lot, Greg, is sellers selling because of homeowners insurance.
Florida,
right?
That's a big one.
Homeowners insurance, right? So where somebody had a policy that was $3,000-4,000, and then it starts inching its way up, right? 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, and the insurance company tells them, "Look, your roof is over 15 years old, or whatever their requirements are. You need to replace your roof," and then that could be $15,000, $20,000. And it's like all of these things that just keeps pushing a seller, right? Taxes, property taxes keep going up. The homeowners insurance, they don't feel comfortable, putting that money up, getting that improvement done, where they just say, you know what, I've had it. I'm done. Right. This market has pushed me out. I can no longer afford to be here, and they have to sell. So that's an interesting one, is insurance. Another scenario that I'm thinking about is the 2-story home.
Yes.
The 2-story home.
Yes.
I've actually done lists because I have a team of telemarketers, as you have had, or probably still have. That's one of my key criteria, right? Is a 2-story home for somebody who's 60 years or older and has been living in the house for X amount of years. That's been like one of the best producing lists, is that 2-story home.
My goodness.
So that's another one.
Oh, yeah.
I think another audience would be maybe the person who lives in the super large lot, very big home, empty nesters, 6 bedrooms, and they just want out. They want something a lot smaller.
Yeah, downsizing, big, for
downsizing. Sure. So, Greg, can you think of any specific examples of how a specific script has helped you convert a transaction to where you said to yourself, you know what, if I wouldn't have come to the seller with this specific approach based on my scripted background, that you may not have taken it, or a scenario where you were competing against agents who just weren't scripted?
So here's the deal: here's where scripting for me has been the juice for sure. I know for a fact I've been on appointments where agents have folded where the seller's like, "Oh, well, thank you. It's a great presentation." They close the folder and they say, "I'm going to think about it. I'll give you a call." They have another appointment, same thing. "Great, I'll think about it. I'll give you a call next week." I come in. They're like, "Hey, I'll think about it. I'll give you a call." And right there at that point, for me, I'm like, "Well, quick question. Do you have any more appointments?" No. At that point, I know I need to close them, right? And because the others left that door open, I'm going to close the door 100% and make sure that there's no way that this seller is not going to sign this agreement, right? Like assuming that we come to terms with the price, we came to terms with commission, right? You know exactly what I'm going to do to get this property sold. I mean, is there any other reason why you wouldn't be willing to put me to work today? No, right? And even isolating all of that, isolating the objection to like each one of those things and just steadily going through it, then for sure, there's nothing else to really discuss. And at that point, you just got to close and have the confidence, more importantly, to close. The other agents may not have that confidence. So they'll say, "Okay, yeah, thank you. And I'll give you a call next week." And the next thing they know, they see that it's listed by me. And it's like, well, you didn't close, or you didn't have the confidence. That's, I think, the biggest piece of the puzzle is that agents are so nervous to be a pushy salesperson that they don't want to close, and they just kind of like, okay, let me just be nice. Maybe my niceness will rub off and they want to work with me because I was really nice and I didn't close them like the other agents. I wasn't that hardcore,
I wasn't pushy.
I wasn't a pushy agent. I was just, I told them about all the nice things and tchotchkes around the house, and we bonded over cookies, right? Screw that, close. And for me, that's probably been the biggest one, is really closing at the end, of just having the strength to close at the end.
It's like you said, confidence and assertiveness, right? And it's asking that question that may seem like they're uncomfortable, right? But if you've been over those, right, you've isolated everything, right? Price, commission, contract, they believe that you can get the job done. Is there any reason why we wouldn't get started today?
Right. Yeah.
And as Aaron has said in the past, hush, breathe, and listen.
That's it. Give it to me.
So I presented to this gentleman in a Starbucks. I did my presentation. We were done. I did ask that same last question, right? Is there any reason why we couldn't do business today? And when I asked that question, Greg, I want to say, and I timed it, he didn't answer. We looked at each other. We looked around for about 5 minutes. I said to myself, I'm not going to say a word.
Yes.
I'm just going to stay here.
Mm-hmm.
Awkward, right?
Yeah.
But I'm going to hang in there.
That's right.
I'm going to hang in there.
Yeah.
And Ultimately's like, okay. All right, fine. And they sign.
That's it.
Right? I think for a lot of sellers, this is a huge decision, right? At the end of the day, it's a partnership with you, the agent. And they have to believe in you. They have to believe that you're credible. They have to know that you have the experience, right? All of these elements. So they're not just going to so easily sign that paper. Some might, right? They might not easily sign that agreement. They need to believe in you, the process, and everything. So if you put them to the test and say, look, this is what I can do, are you game? You have a much higher probability of them signing, as opposed to saying, okay, so I'll call you tomorrow.
Right.
I mean, if you could throw a number, Greg, in your experience, if you leave that listing appointment and you didn't get that signed agreement, what are your probabilities? What are your chances are that you're going to get that listing?
You drop tremendously. I mean, outside of it being like someone in your database, if it's just a fresh, brand new person, you're probably less than 75%. It's going to drop at least, maybe even more than that.
I think that it's very close to your number, right? 1 out of 10, maybe 2 out of 10, you might get once you leave. And there are the analytical personalities, right? Which they need to sleep on it. They need to digest it.
Right.
And you're not going to be able to close it.
Correct. And I'll give you an example too, Chris, is a few years ago, I was looking for a new car. And so I made the decision. I think I went to some type of event and I said, all right, I set a goal for myself. Hey, if I hit this and I do this, then I'm going to treat myself to this, and worked it all out. So I did hit the goal and I said, okay, it's game time. Let's go. So I went to the first dealership, walk in, salesperson approaches me. Hey, my name's Bill, blah, blah, blah. What are you looking for? Okay. Tell him type of car, exactly what I'm looking for, what the works. He's like, all right, we have one in stock. Let me take you over there. And he's like, yeah, this car, it has this, it has this, it has this, it has this, and the wheels, and then this, and blah, 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 blah. For like, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. Didn't stop, didn't take a breath, and just kept telling me about all the things. I already know about the car. I don't need you to tell me about the car. I'm in here because I'm interested and I know about the car. I didn't ask you, hey, by the way, can you tell me about the wheels or the special thing that the tires do? No. So it basically ended. He didn't even ask me if I wanted to buy. He just data dumped me and then said, yeah, you know what? I'll give you a call next week. I'll follow up. I said, okay. All right, cool. So I left. And then following day, I go to another dealership. Guy comes up. He says, hey, my name is Chris. What's yours? My name's Greg. He says, Greg, what brings you in here today? Well, Chris, I'm looking to buy a car. Well, guess what, Greg? We have plenty of those, so we'll be able to help you out with that. So already he asked me 2 questions within 5 seconds, right? Then he keeps on going. So, Greg, I'm curious, when are you looking to make the purchase? Well, I don't know, Chris. If you give me a good deal today, I'll do something today. Boom. He's seeing what's going on. Greg, are you at the end of a lease or are you trading something in? Like, what's your scenario? Yeah, my lease is up, but now I just want to purchase something and blah, 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 blah. Great. And what's your time frame on all of that? Yeah, I really needed to make it happen today because this is going to, I have to turn it in 2 weeks. Great. As a matter of fact, I think we have something that fits that criteria perfectly. It's here in the shop. It has the color that you want. It has all the upgrades that you want. And guess what? Between you and I think I could get you a great deal on that. And if I'm able to do that today, are you willing to sign up with us? Yeah, absolutely. He said, give me 1 second. Left, came back, said, Greg, got good news. I was able to get the price that you want for the car that you want, and we can get this thing wrapped up immediately. As a matter of fact, you can leave your car here and you can leave with this car today. If all we need from you is a signature, we're done. What? This is what I'm talking about. So it was a full sales process of questions. This guy was seasoned. He literally walked me through the sales process. It felt great because I was being heard. He literally found out what I wanted. He served what that was. He found out what all the little details were and solved for those details. Versus, let me just data dump, and hopefully if I data dump enough people, I'll make a connection and somebody will just buy, not because of me, just buy because they just want the car. And they're like, get out the way, just let me buy. Right.
And what's funny is the same time that the other guy was yakking away, right? Like just verbal vomit all over you. That same amount of time, the other guy completely screened you.
Yeah.
Completely pre-qualified you.
Yes. 100%.
Asked you every single question, 100%. Right? Every qualifying question. And it was like green light, right? You were like the totally motivated buyer.
Yeah. And guess what? I appreciated that. It wasn't like I was trying to hide from him. Like, I don't want him to know that I'm trying to buy so I can try to do all this. No, let's do this. Like, I'm ready. I'm an ideal buyer. I will buy today. If you say the right things or figure this thing out, I'm buying today. And he was able to figure that out versus the other guy had no clue what I was trying to do.
Correct. It could also be your personality, right? Where that's just the way that you do business is you're very direct. And he knew how to handle a direct person. Maybe the other person, their personality style was just a little too friendly for you, right? And it just didn't work and they didn't ask the proper questions anyways.
Well, I think if he asked the questions, regardless, even if it was friendly or the personality style, if he just asked enough questions, because I don't I don't like to shop. I don't want to go to like 3 different dealerships or 3 different anything. I want to like one time, knock it out. That's what I want. Let's work it out and I'm out and I can move on with my life. But in that particular scenario, because he didn't do that, I was forced to go somewhere else. And guess what? The sellers that we're meeting with, 9 times out of 10, yes, they do interview multiple agents, but most of the time they don't want to have all these endless interviews. They want to move on with their life.
So they're listening, right? Number one,
Yep.
The person that you're speaking to is listening. And I think that that's key. And one item I haven't mentioned here is that if you're not scripted, what's happening is that all you're thinking about, Greg, and you know this is a fact, all that you're thinking about is your next question if you're not scripted. And if you're just thinking about your next question, you know what's happening is you are not listening to the person that you're speaking to.
That's right. That's right.
They could have just let that nugget go, what you need to close the transaction to help them, right, to closing the appointment, to help them get their property sold if you would have just paid attention to the words that just came out of their mouth.
Yeah.
But you're just concerned on the next question because they say, no, I asked them questions 1, 2, and 3, but they skipped 4 and 5, and then they made me go to 6, and the person's like all thrown off because they went off of the script.
Right.
And the truth is, how often does a sales call go from 1 to 10 with the questions? It's almost like never.
No. It can go, it's very fluid. And again, to your point, what I love about being scripted is that now I don't have to focus on the words, right? I can now focus on the connection. The words are like in the background. Like I'm not even really thinking about them. Like I have like triggers that when you say something, it will trigger this thing in the back, but I'm focused on what you're saying, like the nuances. I'm paying attention to your inflections. I'm paying attention to your personality style. Like now I'm focused on other things that are way better than like the agent that's just looking word for word at the next thing to say. Like it's no competition. Like you want to just make sure like you're at that level where you're conversational and again, you're not thinking. You're more like the Tom Brady where you are now using your robot mind, right? Where you've programmed yourself so much that it's not even a thought anymore. When he jumps back and he's looking, it's automatic. Like the robot brain takes over and it's automatic within a split second. It's not even him thinking, all right, well, if I do this, it's going to be a problem. And he's not thinking about that. It's automatic and it's there. And it's the same thing for us. We want it to be automatic, not even thinking about it. For him, a cornerback moves 2 steps this way. He's like, I got him. And then he can beat him. Same thing. If the seller says something and you're like, got him. And now I know exactly what I need to say in order to bring them to a place that we can actually transact.
And with an expired script, for example, you can read from your questions if you're on the phone. You can't pull that stunt off if you're sitting in front of them in person. Right? If you're doing a listing presentation that you don't know inside and out, when it comes time when the seller is looking for eye contact or you're trying to see where they're at, you're trying to see if they believe in what you're saying, if they feel confident in what you're saying, or if they're squirming because they're uncomfortable with the conversation, whatever that it is, you can pick that out if you're paying attention, as opposed to just being in your own head, thinking of all of these things that are going through your crazy little head because you're not rehearsed, you're not scripted. So you could truly pay attention. And when people feel understood and that you're paying attention to them, that equates into success, I think, for everybody who's involved in the transaction.
I agree. And here's the tip for the newer agents. If you are newer and you don't have it down just yet, still go on the appointments, right? But here's the trick for you is literally type out the entire script, put on the very top of it, put your logo for your company. And when you meet with the seller, say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, in preparation for a time together, I actually typed out a series of questions for you. So would you mind if I go through them now? Yeah, of course. And now it's just prompting you and you're just going to ask your questions and you can fill it out as they're talking. Oh, yeah, great. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you had said that you were moving to blank, right? Yeah. Okay. And you said that this, great. And it's perfectly fine. They won't even know that that they're going through this script per se when you do it like that. So that's for the newer agents.
And I think that that's genius, right? Because the seller feels like you took the time, you wrote the answers to the questions that they had answered for you, and you're covering every single base for them. Every single base for them.
Sure.
Right? It's like, wow, this guy came super prepared. The truth is you don't know the script.
I have no idea what you're doing.
That's the truth.
Winging it, at best.
In all reality, you have a much higher chance of taking that listing because you were sincere. Look, I brought I have a list, as you just mentioned. I have a list of a few questions I'd like to ask you. I just want to make sure I don't miss anything in today's appointment. Would that be okay? You know what they're all going to say without exception? Sure. Yeah, of course.
So now watch, take that scenario back to the 2 car dealerships. So that first car dealership, that verbal vomit, he's going off, etc. Second guy, he's a little bit newer, but he asked those exact same questions. I walk in, hey, Greg, my name is Chris, blah, blah, blah. Would you mind if we just took a seat for 2 seconds? And I just have a series of questions I need to ask you before I show you the car. Is that okay? Great. And he can literally pre-qualify me right there, take copious notes and engage with me and etc. Open it up, create rapport, and then show me the car and close and all that good stuff. Same thing.
And initially, at least maybe this is just, the way that I am, my personality, I may be a little bit annoyed with the person asking me the questions in your scenario. But after they start asking me a few questions, I'm going to be like, this is completely logical. All of these questions that they're asking me, right? Because it's on point. And at the end of the day, I'm getting what I want, which is the vehicle, right? In your scenario, I'm getting a vehicle. And when it comes to buying cars, I, like you, I do all the research before. So it's like, I'm just going there to turn the car on and to drive it around the block, right? That's probably about it.
If that, if even that.
Like, I want to know what the bottom line price is.
Yeah.
And if you're going to finance, if you're going to finance, going rate is 6%. I want to be around 6%, 5%, whatever that is.
Right.
So the price is good. You do your job. Rate's good. Let's do this.
Done. Easy. Same thing. Sellers want the same thing from us. They want it easy. Like, just make it easier for them. Stop just telling them a bunch of stuff that means absolutely nothing to what they're trying to accomplish. Ask them the questions that are going to lead them to a place of decision, and then you guys can transact.
Correct. And removing the drama.
That's it.
Removing the drama. So, Greg, it has been awesome speaking with you today. I'm glad you're able to share some insight with regards to scripts. And Greg, you being in Hoboken, right, New Jersey, what are you looking for, right? I mean, is there any type of investors that you're looking to work with, agents? I mean, how can our audience, connect with you?
Yeah, so whether you're an agent or you're a seller or you just have a question, you can reach out to me. My Instagram handle is @broker2thestars. So that's broker TO the stars. My email is greg@teamtailorinc.com. And my cell phone, 917-805-5411. That's it.
Okay, cool. So what I'll do, Greg, is down below, I'll put all of your contact information in case if anybody didn't grab that, they could see your handle, see all of that good stuff. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, Greg, and we'll connect it once again.
Always. Appreciate you, brother.
All right.